Was it real? Or was it my imagination? Pablo Larraín is an incredible creative mind.
Pablo is such an artist.
He's a visionary.
I come from the world of cinema, where things are condensed to 2 hours. Here, the invitation was to do an 8-hour episodic television show. Stephen King is someone who's been able to understand our humanity in a very universal way. The last 50 years of our culture have been somehow shaped by his stories. I went to Maine and I stayed at Stephen King's house, which was a very fascinating experience. Reading and kind of going over the scripts, trying for me to understand what he really was looking for, that maybe was not exactly on the page. I personally struggled at the beginning. I wanted to take everything to a more grounded sort of space, where the narrative was more naturalistic or realistic. And he was like, no, you have to come to my world where all the things happen to the characters. They do travel to different worlds and different realities. So I had to go as a filmmaker through a process of embrace that narrative. And it's funny because it's somehow what happens to the main character as well. This story is a story of a woman who's trying to put herself together to move on with her life. Liseys doesn't want to admit that that world exists or that kind of things can happen. It's wonderful for me as a filmmaker because you have to find a way to create certain layers of a narrative that is based on this fragmented memory. Memories combined and mixed with fantasy, and that fantasy goes into the real world and vice versa. It was just a fascinating process to embrace the fantasy and the psychological horror in a way that has some poetry and some beauty. This journey of humanity will take us to pain, sorrow, beauty, family, love, a lot of darkness, and a lot of light and healing. The experience of doing this, it really changed me and made me a different filmmaker. So I'm very grateful.
Why are they so important to you?
Because stories are all I had.
Liseys' story is my favorite. It always has been. At its core, this is a love story. It's a story of a woman's courage who would do almost anything to save her husband's life and sanity. Liseys is a different thing for me. It's very close to my heart. I had pneumonia around the year 2000 and came really close to stepping out. When I came home from the hospital, my wife had cleaned out my study, and I thought to myself, I've died. I'm a ghost. And the idea for Liseys' story came from that, particularly the idea that writers, when they make things up, they go to a different world. I wanted to tell the story that was in the book, but I wanted to make it better. I thought if somebody was going to mess it up, I used to tell my wife, nobody's going to mess it up but me. The story of Scott's childhood, when he finally tells it, is particularly horrific. He retreats into this fantasy world. Booyah Moon is a secret place. It's a place that's very, very beautiful and at the same time very dangerous. It's a very scary story in a lot of ways. It's scary in a supernatural way, but it's also scary because there really are dangerous people out there.
Liseys' story could only have come from the mind of Stephen King. It's beautiful and haunting and romantic and horrifying.
When I think on Liseys' story, I can think on Stephen King and how is this connected with his life.
It was a lot of pressure, too. We wanted to make sure that we did him justice and that we did the story justice.
I'm a visual writer. I'm interested in the power of the imagination.
We can talk about it as otherworldly and fantastic. He's like, oh no, it's real. It's real.
Liseys' story is a story of a woman's courage.
It's about a woman who is trying to find herself again after the loss of her husband.
It's a relatable story of family and marriage, and then it goes to a place that only a wild imagination like Stephen King's could take you.
It's a very scary story in a lot of ways. It's scary in a supernatural way, but it's also scary because there really are dangerous people out there.
This is a story about love and relationships and how we save each other.
It's so multi-layered, you know. It's terribly romantic. It's terrifying at times, and it's upsetting, and it's full of pain and beauty.
Liseys is completely grief-stricken.
I've left Liseys a bull hunt. I've given her clues that she is diving into with her grief.
Nobody really knows what goes on in a marriage except the two people who are in it. What is that world that only the two of them know about?
Liseys is kind of drawn into this world.
Liseys is trying to save her sister and save her husband, and then there's this kind of outside pressure where someone is menacing her all the time.
When Scott dies, my character wants his unpublished works to be published. He thinks Liseys is holding them away from the public, so he makes it his mission. He'll do pretty much anything to make sure that happens. Secrets are no fun. Secrets hurt someone.
We are straddling whole different worlds, and in some ways, whole different genres.
I think that in and of itself is really unusual. To have this kind of, this horror, this supernatural element. Where'd you go? Come back.
It's very unique and unusual. A really strong, beautiful vision.
It just works on so many levels.
Stephen King has cracked this beautiful story.
He's someone who's been able to understand our humanity in a very universal way.
This is a love story. It's a beautiful, unearthly thing.
Talk to me.
I have visions. I write them down and people pay to read them.
Scott had a history of becoming unstuck to reality. Where'd you go? He called it being gone. Where'd you go? I don't know how to do this without you. Come back. I'm on a bull hunt.
What's a bull hunt?
Like a scavenger hunt Scott and his brother made up when they were kids.
Mrs. Landon, I just thought I'd give it one more try in person. Scott's unpublished works need to be collected, examined.
You're never going to see his papers.
She won't let them go.
I'll get those papers for you. Scott Landon's books change.
Do you remember that night you asked if I was crazy?
I believed in it. That's how strong his imagination is.
There's a place. I'll take you there.
What is this? Where are we?
You solve all the riddles, find all the clues, and you get a prize.
Where we went today, was it real? Or was it my imagination? I said, Doctor, Mr. Empty, would you tell me what's wrong with me? He's gone, but he keeps pushing me.
Toward what?
Was it real? Or was it my imagination?